It's getting to be that time of year again where we're starting to look towards those fall and winter holidays. Specifically, American Thanksgiving is just right around the corner. I know that holidays can be a little bit tough to navigate, especially if you're a new vegan, because so many of these holidays have a food culture that is just very meat saturated. So I thought I'd reach back into my recipe archive and show you the first holiday main that I ever developed for my website. This is an eggplant, mushroom, and chestnut loaf. It's actually made with a pizza dough, so it's really easy to make, and it's braided, so it's stunning. I'm gonna walk you through how to make that today, and hopefully make a few tweaks and improvements to the original recipe while I'm doing it. If you're celebrating Thanksgiving for the first time as a vegan, this could be a great dish for you to make and contribute to the meal. Another thing to consider is you might want to ask other people doing the cooking if they can make a few simple tweaks. Things like using vegan butter instead of regular butter in mashed potatoes, or maybe considering a mushroom gravy instead of a meat gravy. I'm very lucky to have a family who at this point pretty much exclusively does a vegan Thanksgiving with me. When I was a young vegetarian, we pretty much had normal Thanksgiving, and I had a meal of mashed potatoes and stuffing. I think that might be why Thanksgiving food isn't exactly my favorite, but that's okay. I'm here to take back Thanksgiving with you. I think this recipe is really great because you don't have to be like an experienced chef to make it look beautiful. We're gonna do that together in our own kitchens. Let's get started. Here's everything you're going to need. 1 large eggplant, 6 ounces of mixed mushrooms. I have shiitakes, creminis, and some lion's mane. 1 onion, 5 cloves of garlic, some chestnuts. I have about 6 ounces or 1 heaping cup of peeled chestnuts, and I really recommend you buy these frozen and peeled because they're just not worth the trouble of peeling them yourself. Some spices. Here I have rosemary, thyme, fennel, and sage. And then also some pizza crust. You're gonna want about 1 pound of it, and it can be store-bought or something you make yourself, whichever you prefer. We're gonna start off by peeling and chopping the eggplant. You want the pieces to be cut pretty small, like this. Let's move on to our mushrooms next. I like to just kind of slice them like so. And then once I get a lot of them done, I'll come back and just dice this all up so they're in small pieces. Mushrooms done. Now for our onion. Normally I would like a bigger onion, but this is the size I have. And we're just gonna dice it. If you haven't mastered your onion dice yet, it's pretty easy. You just cut it in half here, keeping the root side intact on both sides. You go through and make some radial cuts that still leave that root intact. And then just slice down the width, and you've got a nice dice. Garlic. My philosophy is, unless you're eating it raw, garlic really doesn't need to be minced. I usually do something like that because I don't find it unpleasant to get a piece of garlic about that size if it's been cooked. If you are more garlic sensitive, you may want to mince this. And finally, our chestnuts. These were frozen, but I did thaw them a little bit. So we just want to cut them into small pieces, about like that. We're going to start with a large skillet and a little bit of oil. We're going to throw in our spices and our diced onion, and just saute that until the onions start to be a little bit translucent. Let's just go ahead and add that garlic now. The onions are looking translucent and everything is fragrant, so I'm going to go ahead and add my mushrooms and all this eggplant. Season with some salt to help bring out the moisture in the eggplant. Our eggplants and mushrooms have cooked down quite a lot and are starting to get real sticky to each other. I'm just gonna add our chestnuts now and then saute for another couple minutes. And now we're just gonna set that aside and let it cool down a little bit before we move on to the next step. Next, we're gonna roll out our dough. So we're gonna roughly flour our surface and plop on our dough. Our goal is to get a fairly large rectangle. I think that will work. We're going to place our filling in the center of the dough, making sure we leave a nice border of 2 to 3 inches, I would say, around the entire edge. One of the ways I've made this recipe a little bit easier is by taking out the food processor. Originally, I had you make it into a little bit of a finer mince in the food processor, but I think that step was kind of unnecessary. And I do like the idea of having these slightly larger chunks so you can get like a bite of chestnut or a bite of mushroom. And now you don't have to clean the food processor. So that's all the filling. I think I'm going to just even it out a little bit and make it into a kind of rectangle shape. Now let's do some chopping. We're going to start right here and make a thick V shape. The same on the other side. And then we're going to start cutting lines that are perpendicular to our filling. I didn't count them. I don't think it matters that much. The only thing that matters is that all the cuts should be even. So if there's a cut here, there should be a cut here. I've not done this in a long time, so hopefully it works out well. I'm gonna pull this over and just kind of tuck it in. And the same with this side. Next, grab this and pull it over to the other side. You're just gonna wanna stretch as you go. Last time I just weaved it all the way down, but I actually think it might look nice if you then start from this end and go back. So I'm gonna try that. Yeah, it's not like quite as tidy, I'd say, but I think it still looks nice. Got a large baking sheet, and I'm just gonna coat it with some cornmeal to prevent sticking. You could also just use parchment paper. And we're just gonna delicately transfer this giganzo. Got it. Now that it's on the baking sheet, you can reshape it a little bit. I just stretched it out a little bit because I think it got a little bit smooshed. The last step before putting it in the oven is just to brush with a little bit of plant-based milk. This will help us get a shiny crust. This step is optional. You could also use melted butter or aquafaba if you prefer. And we're gonna bake this until it is golden brown. Let's make a bit of a gravy to go with our holiday loaf. We're going to start by finely chopping some mushrooms. I'm gonna use this choppy thing, which I've never used before. I actually got it from my sister's roommate, but I have not given it to her yet. So quality control, we'll make sure it works. I might have overfilled it. Yeah, that's better. I think my specific goal here is to finely chop these mushrooms, and it's okay that they're smashed. So I would say that works. I think if you're making something where you don't want your produce to be smashed, this might not be the best tool. Never underestimate a knife. Am I supposed to do it like in the cap? Oh, I think you're supposed to do it in the cap. Works better anyway. Normally I would add onions, but somehow my household is onion deficient. So we're just gonna add garlic today, but I recommend that you also add onions or shallots if you're feeling fancy. I'm not looking forward to cleaning this. I like to add a generous-ish amount of oil. That's probably about a 1/4 cup, because normal gravy has fat from meat in it. So if you're making a mushroom gravy and you want it to be really rich, maybe add a little bit extra oil. I'm just gonna add the same spices that I put in my loaf. Some fennel seeds, some rosemary, sage, thyme, and if I could find tarragon, I would also add tarragon because tarragon works really beautifully with mushrooms. Our oil's warm. We're just gonna add all the mushrooms and garlic together. And we're gonna saute this down. I'm holding off on adding salt at this point because I'm gonna be adding a vegan oyster sauce to this, and I don't want the gravy to get too salty. I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of flour, and we'll just mix it in and then cook it for a couple minutes. I'm also gonna add a little bit of this vegetable oyster sauce, probably about a tablespoon. I like this because it adds a lot of umami to it. It has soy sauce and it has MSG. Other things you could use would be just soy sauce, because just MSG would work too, or miso paste. All of these are really great sources of umami that will boost the savoriness of your gravy. I do also like to add a little bit of mustard, so I'm gonna do that now. This doesn't really make it more authentically gravy tasting, I don't think, but I just like that little spice from the mustard in my gravy. I only added maybe 1.5 teaspoons. All right, now we're gonna add our liquid. I'm gonna go with 1 cup of plant-based milk, but you could also do vegetable stock or just water if you prefer. Now we're gonna bring it to a simmer and let it thicken. Dinner is served. Why do you think this is for you, buddy? You guys, this looks pretty. It has a big mushroom taste, even though it's actually more eggplant than mushroom. And then you hit those little bits of the chestnuts and that sweet potatoey nuttiness. Delicious. It feels very festive. I actually think a mushroom gravy might be a little bit of overkill on the mushroom part, but we made it, so we'll try it. You know, I take that back. It is just kind of mushroom on mushroom, but it also has a lot of creaminess to it from the oat milk that I think does add to the whole overall mushroom experience. Overall, this is quite tasty. Oh, I'm getting more eggplant now, actually. There it is. The eggplant is there. I love that. It adds just like a tiny bit of vegetal bitterness in a very pleasant way. And then the crust is simple, but it's perfect for sopping up that gravy. I love it. This is what I'll say. This is actually a pretty simple Thanksgiving meal. It's pizza dough, which you can even do like I did and use a shop-bought pizza dough. Mushroom, eggplant, chestnut. That chestnut is a little bit fancier, which is lovely. It's a fairly simple main, but really it is just having that special something in the table, that centerpiece that makes it feel like a feast or a celebration and like not just a meal of sides. Although, when you make really good sides, I'm not opposed to that either. That is it for this week. Let me know if you'd be interested in some more Thanksgiving main options and we can explore that together. Until next week, I hope you like this video, subscribe, and have a wonderful week. Thanks, bye.